Mixed voice is a hot topic in the singing world, and chances are you're in search of that elusive experience, finding your mix. With so much, sometimes conflicting information out there on how to achieve a mix, today we're breaking down 6 common misconceptions about mixing and your singing voice.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Cortman Westfall, a Broadway music director, voice coach, and tenured professor in the musical theater department at the University of Michigan.
And I'm Chelsea Wilson, a performer turned voice teacher to Broadway stars and vocal coach on Broadway productions like The Phantom of the Opera, School of Rock, and more.
Here on the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, you can expect real talk about the business, practical advice, and constant encouragement.
We believe there's space for every artist in this industry. All you need is the right support. So consider us your 2-woman hype team. Welcome to the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, where we help musical theater performers get unstuck and take the next step in their careers.
Chelsea, I am so excited to talk about this topic today. This is indeed a hot topic. I don't think there is a singer in the world of musical theater right now that is not either working to find their mix, trying to find their mix, thinking maybe they found their mix, but maybe not, or what is a mix, or they're mixing. It is.
Yes.
You're either actively mixing or you're trying to find how to mix. You live in one or the other camp. So there are a lot of things we could talk about, but today we're going to talk about some misconceptions. So I literally think of you as the mix master. I just think you are brilliant talking about all things mix related. And so will you tell us just a little bit about what qualifies you to talk about this topic? Because I know that you are so incredibly educated in this topic, but I would love you to share that with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a young singer, just like so many singers, I had this big break in my voice and I could either sing really loud or like quietly in my head voice, right? So that's the background I came from, as I feel like so many young singers have. I was like that classic Annie type, just belting as loud and as high as I could. And of course, yes, I did play Annie in my 7th grade production.
Of course you did. They
come on.
Saved money on the wig. They didn't have to buy a wig for you.
Yeah, no wig. I did buy it's a fun fact though. My mom bought bright red, clown red, hairspray dye color just to make it even redder. I don't know that it was effective. I've got to say, I don't know that it was the right choice. But anyways, yes, I've been in this position too, really feeling like, why is my voice not doing the thing I want it to do? I'm experiencing this big break in the middle of my voice. How do I get more of this kind of one voice experience? And when I was in middle school, I started studying with this incredible teacher named Carrie Hughes. This is when I was living in Atlanta, Georgia. And she introduced me to this concept of mixing. So thankfully, I was with a teacher who had some understanding of this idea of blending registers, blending chest voice and head voice to get a smoother sound. I was then introduced to her voice teacher, a man named Jeffrey Skousen, who lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. And at the time, he was one of the top teachers within Seth Riggs' teaching organization. Seth Riggs is a legendary voice teacher in LA. He's taught everyone from Michael Jackson to Mariah Carey. And Seth Riggs and his teaching organization really kind of pioneered this concept of mix back in the late 80s and 90s. He was teaching other teachers how to teach this technique, this kind of philosophy about singing. So when my family moved to Southern Utah, I started taking voice lessons with Jeffrey. One of my parents would drive me the nearly 2 hours to Las Vegas every Friday to have a voice lesson with Jeffrey. Yeah, that is serious dedication, my friends. Me on my Friday nights, in the car with my parents to drive to Vegas, not to do fun Vegas things, but go to a voice lesson. So this is really where, my voice training started to take off. And I've shared on the podcast before, but it was when I was simultaneously in school studying musical theater, getting a performance degree. I was also pursuing my private teaching certification. So back then I was with Speech Level Singing, Seth Riggs' teaching organization. And then in 2013, I joined Institute for Vocal Advancement, which really took a lot of those concepts and this idea of mixing and incorporated a lot of modern science and vocal science and vocal health to really take the art of teaching mix to the next level. So I've been kind of in pursuit of this whole mixing thing for 2/3 of my life, first as a singer And then as a teacher who's really studying how to teach blending, how to teach mixing, how to help singers find and discover those feelings and those sensations in their own voice. So it's my favorite thing to talk about. And I think it's one of my favorite things to talk about because there are so many misconceptions out there about what mixing is, how to achieve it, how to quote, find it, blah, blah, blah. So let's get into it, Cynthia. You've heard some of these things about mixing. So you tell me what you heard. I'll myth bust them for you. How about that?
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. How many hours do we have on the podcast today for all the myth busting?
Yeah.
Great. All right, but let's hit a bunch of the big ones. Okay. Here's the first one. Your mix is a separate register in your voice that you will discover one day.
Yeah, not quite. Not quite. I think a lot of people think about finding their mix as this like separate entity. And I'm just here to tell you this is not an archaeological dig. You are not going to stumble upon it one day. Mixing, the verb mixing, is exactly what it sounds like. It is a skill that you can develop. It is a coordination. It is a coordination of blending your chest voice, sounds and feels like your speaking voice. Some people refer to that as thick chords or more mode one. There's a lot of ways to talk about what chest voice feels like in the voice. So it's blending chest voice and head voice. Woo woo! That thinner placement, mode two. Again, there's a lot of ways singers and teachers talk about this. And here's the deal, this coordination, some people develop this blend really naturally, without a lot of training, might be even just something that comes really quite easily to them. And some people take months or even years to develop that kind of blend or coordination in their voice. But thinking that you're going to just stumble upon it, you're just going to do like one right exercise and then all of a sudden you found it, you can access it every single time as if it's, again, like a separate place that you go into, is a bit of a misconception.
I love that. All right. Well, let's keep going here. Here's another. It's similar to number one, but I think there's more to it. So, mixed voice is a separate place or a different register in your voice.
Yeah, again, this idea that if chest voice is distinctive and head voice is distinctive, then my mix might also be really distinctive, right? As its own separate register. Not entirely true. We'll talk a little bit about how people perceive their voice in a minute, but think about mixing or mix voice as, again, that blend of chest and head voice that happens at our passages, that happens at the transition points in your voice. And for us as singers, there are many places that we transition or quote break. If that transition is really not smooth, we often refer to it as our break, right? For most sopranos, mezzo sopranos, that first passage takes place around A4 to C5. So A above middle C, all the way up to C5, C above middle C. For tenors and baritones, that often takes a place at E4 to G4, so E above middle C or even E flat. And if those ring true for you, then you're like, yeah, oh my gosh, I hate singing through that part of my voice, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do in that part of my voice. And it's because that's where we really have an opportunity to allow that mixing to happen, that blending to happen. Mixing is something that happens at our passages, and it's something that we're kind of continuously doing throughout our voice. Again, think about what the word mixing means. We're combining two or more things, right? A mix. It's that blend of a low register and a high register as we go throughout our range.
Mm-hmm. All right. Point number 3. Tell us if this is a myth or a truth. I only need to mix if I sing in certain styles of musical theater.
My friends, do you want a smooth transition from low notes to high notes and back down again? If you do, it doesn't matter the style of music that you sing. Think about mixing or developing your mix technique as something that allows you to blend throughout your range with minimal breaks in your voice. I can't think of any genre of music that doesn't ask for that at some point or another, right? Every style needs access to that kind of even blend at some point or another. If stylistically flipping or choosing to switch between registers really purposefully is such a cool stylistic tool. We hear it all the time in pop music, R&B, in some contemporary musical theater. But if that's your default, if that's technically like the only thing you can do, I can kind of only sing with these dynamics in this part of my voice, and then I have to flip and it goes breathy, and those are your only choices, then that's just limiting as a singer. And I really think about developing your technique. I'm thinking about mix as, again, just a foundation of technique, as a way for you to have more choices, more colors, more options in your voice as a singer. And as an artist, isn't that what we all want? We all want more options, colors, choices. I often explain mix as having a balanced voice. And if you can imagine with me a clock, and the minute and hour hand are at 12 o'clock, that's balance in our voice. And that's going to sound and feel a little bit different for everybody because every instrument is different. But once you've found that balance, you can then lean to 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in a more belty direction, or a more chest dominant direction. Or you could lean the other way to a more legit sound, right? To 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever, to a more classical sound. But being able to come back to home base, being able to come back to balance in your voice is really what allows you to explore the different colors and stylistic choices in your voice. That's what I feel like developing a mix allows singers to do.
I love that analogy. And that also gets into another confusion, I think, surrounding this, which is sometimes people think that their mix only is going to sound in one certain way, that they're going to know when they're mixing
Yes.
because it sounds like this.
Yes.
Talk to us more about that. What are the different colors that you can achieve all within that heading of mix?
Yeah, again, think about, and this is really our point number 4 here, is think about mixing as the underlying technique of everything you're doing. You're constantly negotiating a coordination between chest voice and head voice. Ah, I can do that beltier, I can do that headier, or I can do that whatever. But I think this is where another misconception here is that singers do feel like a mix needs to sound a certain way, or they need to feel it in a certain way, a particular way, maybe how whoever they heard on TikTok talking about it, however they perceive it in their voice, right, is how I need to perceive it in my voice. No, absolutely not. Everyone perceives their voice differently. That's what makes singing really fun to teach, and also really difficult to teach, because everyone experiences their voice differently or perceives their voice differently. So some people do feel like they have distinct, quote, mixes in their voice. Like, okay, I'm going to choose a head dominant mix, or I'm going to choose a chest mix here. I'm going to choose like my mix here, right? And that's how some people perceive it. Other people perceive that mixing sensation moving throughout their range as a gentle stretch, a gradual stretch into the upper part of their voice, whereas other people feel it as a more obvious switch. Okay, I am in my chest voice, and at this note, I know I switch into something else, right? None of that's right or wrong. It's just all comes down to how you perceive your own voice. So I think where this gets tricky for singers, working with teachers or trying to find a teacher who can help you achieve the blend, that even balanced tone that you're after in your voice, is that some teachers like to talk about it in this certain way, and you might benefit from language that's a little bit different. So you've really got to find the right fit in terms of a teacher or a program or just a general philosophy about using your voice that allows room for you to perceive your voice however you perceive it. I think that's really, really crucial.
I love that there isn't a right, wrong answer. It's both the blessing and the curse. Because I know for some
Yeah.
singers, they want there to be a right answer. What am I supposed to feel? What am I supposed to hear? And everybody is so different, and everyone's perception of what is happening inside is so different. And that's why having someone like you, who is such an expert in helping people negotiate that and navigate that and make sense of it for themselves, is so, so helpful.
Singing is so personal. Yeah, I think this leads us into our next point.
Yep. This is why, again, having a teacher or coach who can really help you navigate this is so important, because here is our next potential myth. You tell us. Everyone can learn to mix with the same handful of vocal exercises.
I wish. Wouldn't that be easy?
Wouldn't that be
Wouldn't that be
nice?
great? Wouldn't that
Right?
be awesome?
Drink this pink drink and you two can mix.
Oh, I
I know.
wish. I would have saved a lot of money and time and energy over the years, I'll tell you what. No, I wish, I wish. And I think in the age that we live in now with so much great information online to be found, there's also plenty of information that's just like never going to be applicable to you and your voice. So this is an analogy that I use a lot with my students, and it's an analogy that I use in my mixed voice course that's coming out soon. It's this idea that if we're all trying to get to Mixland, and let's imagine that Mixland is Chicago, okay? Imagine a map of the United States. Mixland is Chicago. We're all trying to get to Chicago. And there's some of us who are located in Seattle, in LA, and Atlanta. And if I only gave directions to Chicago from Atlanta, what the heck is the people in LA and Seattle going to do with that information, right? That doesn't help them whatsoever. They are still stuck where they're at trying to follow directions from Atlanta. It doesn't make any sense. And it's the same thing with our voice. And this is where I feel like a lot of the information online gets a little fuzzy and confusing for singers, is because they're taking this information that could work for one person or perhaps one vocal tendency or people who experience their voice this particular way, and hoping that those same vocal exercises or that same advice is going to work for them. And it's just not. So that's really been a huge focus of mine in the development of this mix course. We're doing a beta test right now with a group of 17 awesome singers who are going through the voice lesson plans that I've put together, who all have very different backgrounds and experience their voice very differently. They're going through the course and they've chosen their unique lesson plan based on a self-assessment that they've done. And I'm getting awesome feedback from them about, okay, great, I've identified what my unique challenge is in my voice, and now I'm going to go through a lesson plan that's suited for that in particular. I think when it comes to quote mixed voice exercises, there's a lot that we've seen. I love a nasty nay, 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 or a tongue out ah, or things like that you see a lot online. They work for so many people, but having the knowledge that there may be certain exercises or ways of thinking or processes of going and finding that balance in your voice that are going to be unique to you, oh, that is so beneficial. And that's what I'm really excited for folks to get inside my upcoming mix course, is something that's tailor-made for them, kind of a choose your own adventure lesson plan that meets people where they're at.
I love that. That map analogy is so great. I think that's so accurate.
I think there's a lot of things in our lives that way. Yeah.
I think that is very true. Yes. All right, we've got one more here, and this is a big one. I think this is one I hear a lot. When I learn to mix, I will never feel the transition in my voice again.
Again, I wish. Wouldn't that be nice? When I tell students to get rid of the expectation that you will no longer feel the quote break or switch or transition in your voice, get rid of that expectation, all of a sudden it frees them up to just try new things, keep working on their voice, and trust that their voice is still doing the right thing, even though they can still feel the mechanics of it. An analogy I like is, think of a race car driver who is in this, souped up manual car, right? Like they've got to shift gears from one to the next. And out here on the racetrack, all we see is this race car just gradually accelerating, right? Really evenly, no stops or starts. That's what we see from the audience, from the grandstand. But inside, that race car driver is working and they are manually shifting gears. Like they are aware of when the car is moving from quote one register to another, right? One gear to another. And so I think this is important for singers to understand that over time, as this blend in your voice gets more developed, as the transition from low to high notes becomes more smooth, something that you can really depend on, it will feel easier, right? Like it won't feel as severe as it did at the beginning, but it's never going to feel like nothing. You're never just going to be like, oh, it's imperceptible to me. I have no idea where I am in my voice. Of course you will know what's going on. You're the one driving the car. You're the one, it's your instrument. The instrument is not outside of yourself, right? It is actually part of your body. You are going to be aware of what it feels like, and it's totally okay if 20 years into your mixing journey, you still feel that transition happening. Absolutely fine. Get rid of that expectation for yourself, and I think it will really free you up to try new things, keep working on your voice, and again, have a more realistic expectation of what's possible in your singing.
Mm-hmm. I love the race car analogy.
Do you think that's true, Cynthia? In your own singing, like, do you think that's true?
Yes. The reason I love that race car analogy so much, I drive a Beetle that's a stick shift still to this day. And there's something about the gear shift that makes me feel kind of powerful and in control that I have to really consciously make choices. And I know exactly when
Yeah.
they're happening. And I know exactly what's going to happen when I shift that gear. And that analogy for me in my own voice and with other folks that I teach, I think actually can be really empowering. It's like, no, you're going to feel it, and that's okay because you're in total control and you have choices, as opposed to, imagine if you're driving a stick shift and it all of a sudden falls out of gear and you hear that terrible grinding noise or it stalls. Like, those are the scary moments. It's scary when something
Yeah.
happens that you're not expecting, but when you know what you're doing and you know how to transition through those passagios, then it's actually really exciting to drive the race car and to feel all of that and to know that you are in control of what's happening. I think that's actually really exciting.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree. I think if I could give singers any advice, I would just say be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, learning to sing in any capacity and learning to have an understanding of mixing through the passages, blending throughout your range from low to high and back down again takes time and takes real exploration. It's a brave singer who says, I am not going to care what I sound like today. I am just going to sound really weird as I go through these funny exercises, and I'm going to put the funny exercises on my song melody and see how they feel there too, and then go into my song, put the lyrics back on it and see if there's any change. You've got to be brave to do that. I think singing is a really brave act because we self-identify with how we sound, right? It's why listening to ourselves back on a recording can be so uncomfortable sometimes. Like, is that really
Yeah.
how I sound? When I listen back to our podcast episodes, I'm like, oh wow, that's how I sound. That's how I sound. So I'm still there too. But again, if you can let go of needing to sound good, needing to sound pretty, needing to sound like commercially viable for enough time to really allow yourself to try something new, develop something, I really think learning to mix is, like we've said, we're coordinating two muscle groups like your biceps and your triceps. You can't just work your biceps and hope that you're going to be able to throw 100-mile-an-hour baseball pitch. You've got to work your bicep and your tricep and your shoulder, and you got to have a positive attitude if you're ever going to throw that pitch.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with your voice. You've really got to think about it holistically and be working all parts of your voice if you want to find that even blend. Working your chest voice, working your head voice, working the mind piece of it. How am I talking to myself? How am I thinking about singing as I'm going through this? And that's what I hope for all singers. And I'm hoping that this new mixed voice course is going to be an amazing resource for so many singers who are really looking for something that's going to be specific to them. And again, meeting them where they're at.
Yep. Let me ask you one final question as we wrap up.
Yeah.
Can anyone learn to mix?
Yeah.
Or is it certain voices lean easier to a mix? Or is it something that anyone can learn to do?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me this question. Yes, anyone can learn to do this because, again, it's a coordination. It is a physical coordination, just like learning to write and coordinating your fingers and your wrist and your forearm helps you learn to write. Just like learning to dance is a coordination of muscles in your body, learning to sing is just a coordination. And it is tough to navigate that, especially if you're on your own. I get that. I totally get that. But yes, anyone can learn to blend the low part and the high part of their voice and achieve this mix. Now, again, like I said earlier, it might be easier for some people to get there. It really might. Some people are just like, this feels natural in my voice. It's exactly what my voice wants to do. And other people are going to have to work at it. But because it's a coordination, with the right tools, with the right coaching, with the right teacher, you can achieve that. You can find more balance in your voice. And that's my goal for everyone.
I love that. All right, you heard it here. Everyone can learn to mix. I love that.
Thanks, Cynthia. This is great. I could talk about this all day long.
Sometimes I feel like we are talking about mixing all day long.
All day long.
It is a hot topic. It's a hot topic.
It is. It is. It absolutely is. Well, listen, everyone listening, if you want to get more information about my upcoming Mix Voice course, there is a link in the episode description to get on the wait list, get notified when it becomes available. I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on this. The link is in our description, or you can go to bwayvocalcoach.com/mix course interest and join our waitlist, and we will notify you when the course becomes available. In the meantime, we've got awesome resources, free resources on our website. Just navigate to bwayvocalcoach.com. Go to all the free stuff in the free resources tab, and we've got lots of singing tips and even some warm-ups there that you can get totally for free in the meantime. Thanks, Cynthia.
Thanks, Chelsea.
If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and tag us when you do at B-Way Vocal Coach, or send this episode to a friend. Just go ahead, text this episode to a friend, someone who you think might enjoy this topic. And please consider leaving us a review. If you're ready to take your next step as a singer, but you aren't entirely sure what that should be, then take our quiz. We'll strategize with you to outline a roadmap to your unique goals, and plus, from there, you can book a free consult with us. Visit bwayvocalcoach.com/take the quiz. We can't wait to hear your story and help you take the next step in your career.